Hey everybody, welcome back to Relentless Talk Radio. I have Rainey with me here today from Rainey Studios. So I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about who he is and what he does. So this is episode 41, segment 3, and this is the art and fashion episode of Relentless Talk Radio. So Wayne, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me. I guess you would say that I am I'm an artist. I'm a little tentative about using that moniker these days because so many people kind of cling to that without really producing work. And I'm probably one of those people at this point. My work is a little different very often than what's thought of artwork in the mainstream. But I make images, I make video, and I'm a father right now. I'm a new father, so I think that's all kind of an art.
And how old is the boy, right?
What's that?
You have a little boy, right?
He's 13 months, yeah.
He's 13 months. Wow, he's like brand new, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge shift.
It really is.
That's really amazing. So talking earlier this afternoon, we were testing VLive, and we had a little bit of a conversation. And you and I agreed that art isn't just about painting or taking photographs or creating a art object. It's also about writing and how you live and how you raise your children and how you build your business. And it's a creative act. You and I both agree that art is a creative act. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it describes somebody that's adept at conveying an idea or a message in a way that when it's received, it's welcomed. Whether or not you might agree with the premise. I mean, right?
Right.
So if you can get an idea across to somebody in a way, and sometimes it's oblique or even camouflaged, but I think really good art sticks with you and kind of maybe it grinds on you a little bit and makes you rethink sometimes very very basic tenets that we've thought we already have worked through. It's a change maker.
I like that. The art can grind on you.
No, absolutely. Good art.
So,
really.
Filmmaking is a really great way to connect with people because it really does make people think.
It's
right?
cunningly persuasive.
Right?
Yeah.
You can get people to believe just about anything if you produce it well enough, I guess, right?
Obviously.
You know what I mean? I mean, get them to think about it, right?
Take a look around.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah. So you and I also were talking about how conversation is an art form. And that made me laugh because that's the whole reason why I created Relentless Talk Radio, because I wanted to have 4 conversations about art and fitness, art and fashion, health and fitness, entrepreneurism, and philanthropy in a way that I could condense and then make art from. An actual art object from using writing. So that's how I create. So I created Relentless Talk Radio, which is all about the conversation, which to me is part of the art. It's one of the 3 components of how I make art. Mm-hmm. So I'm intrigued that you think conversation is an art form. That's pretty cool.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had to kind of that was an epiphany that came upon by having a son late in life. I was trying to figure out how I could effectively pass on anything that I might have learned. So I spent the last, even before he was born, a good year trying to gather my thoughts and really lay down some sort of cohesive framework for what I'd already picked up in my 50 years. I didn't want to go to waste no matter what happened. If anything prematurely took me out of the teaching position.
It's really interesting. As you're saying that, I have a memory of last year. My dad and I share the same birthday, and last year I was able to get home for his birthday. We actually thought that my father was dying, and so on our birthday, he was sitting on the edge of the bed with his hat on, dressed, ready to go. He bounced back, and here we are a year later. But one of the things we did was we went out to dinner, out to lunch, like a couple days later, like how my dad and I used to. And I recorded a conversation of him talking about a hunting trip he took with his father. And I thought, I want to get more of those conversations recorded before my father leaves the planet. So you're actually doing that proactively, so that when you're gone, your child will have a whole conversation that's over the length of the lifetime that you had with him on this planet.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't written
really cool.
every day, but almost every day I've found something, something occurs to me and I've got to put this into my notes. And it's really been, life-changing for me as well, because we forget, I think, how much we've gleaned over 50 years of life. And of course we have these little reminders over and over again. We talked about this earlier about the interesting way that we learn. And, if you don't put it down, if you don't explore that on paper, I think we often assume that, oh yeah, I'll tell him that someday. I'll remember to do that. And very rarely do we follow through on those kind of possibilities. It's a shame. And it doesn't take long just to pin it out. It's so funny how it evolves. You'll write a thought down and especially when you're writing to somebody that you love, and especially in this case, somebody that can't talk back and interrupt you. Not yet. But I'm so looking forward to it, because I'm sure that'll take it in a whole different direction. But wow, it's really it's been life-changing for me as well. Just gathering those thoughts and just any everyday kind of lesson that you might come upon, if you think of it in terms of teaching your child, you can really go through a lot.
It's interesting because 6 summers ago I went home to Vermont with the purpose of packing up my journals and sending them here to Arizona. And I made a decision, rather than to send them to Arizona, to shred them. And so I shredded from age 5 through age 42. And then I came out here and I burned from 43 to 50. And it was a pretty huge thing, because it was my whole life, Mm-hmm. But what it did was I realized that my whole life, this is interesting because you're writing to a specific person who's going to see what you're writing. My whole life, I've been putting all of my work and all of my thoughts and all of my energy and all of my art into these journals that nobody ever saw.
Right.
I wrote it was the thing, and that was it, right? It just got put away. And so there was probably about 1,300 journals.
Wow.
About 3,600 drawings. A lifetime. This is how I've lived my whole life. And by destroying them, it gave me permission to share them real time. Mm-hmm. So if I hadn't destroyed those journals, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you learn something that you hadn't expected from writing, and sometimes, it was an unexpected thing. So what's the biggest lesson you think you've learned as an artist? Because you've made films and you've made photographs and you've been writing, but what's your biggest lesson as an artist, do you think?
Oh, wow, you should have given me that question in advance. I could have thought that one through.
Yeah, what's the biggest lesson you've learned as you started building your art business?
Well,
you got that one. I think you did.
Did I? Did you give me that one?
Yeah.
It's a big, as far as the business, I think the thing that I learned from my art business that I still am trying to learn today is that no matter what you think you know about perspective, and there's always more to learn. I mean, empathy and
Amen.
Just forgetting that you can't walk everybody else's path, and you can't possibly know what's going to be sensitive or offensive to somebody else. When I built the Monorchid in 1999, that was a really it was a dangerous neighborhood, and I built some affordable housing across the street, specifically for artists as well. And I'd forgotten to think through a couple of things. I forgot to think about who had maybe tried to do the same thing before I had, so maybe I was a little egotistical about my brilliant move, and I also forgot to, when I did the affordable artist housing, there were 3 people that lived in this apartment complex. They weren't. One was an alcoholic, and he was on his way out. He ended up dying there. The other 2, one was a prostitute, and the other one was kind of just a street thug. But those were people too, and at the time, I didn't have the required empathy to really think through it. Even though these people weren't really paying rent, this was still their home. It's funny how we go and we think we're going to make this huge change and make things better for the world, but actions have consequences, and there's so many layers to things, and we have to really walk carefully, or at least pay attention when we walk, and listen to the results. That was one of my biggest lessons from doing Monorchid and doing Holga's.
It's a huge, humble admission that you just did there. I really respect you for saying that. Mm. That's a huge thing to share with people. Recently there was a mural project in downtown Phoenix, and there was an article somewhere that kind of basically noted that the neighborhood hadn't kind of given a thumbs up for the project. And I thought, it's kind of interesting, right? So I think that we all get a chance to learn that on a different level, as we go. Do you still own the Monorchid?
No. I sold it last year to a good friend of mine, on the condition that he would go forward with the
plan,
with the heart and soul of it. Wouldn't tear it down. Really good guy, Jonathan Vinto, and I'm actually partnered with him on the bigger project, which is about 5 city blocks surrounding that area now. So we've got a hotel up and another one in the works. And
which is what hotel?
It's not open yet, but it's right at the corner of 3rd Street and
Roosevelt?
Portland.
Okay.
Moreland. Yeah. And I can't remember what flag it is right now.
So I was living on McDowell and 3rd, and so I just made a decision to move to North Phoenix, and had an opportunity to live in that neighborhood for 6 months. And it really is amazing. I'm so glad I had an opportunity to live down there. It's amazing what's happened to Roosevelt Row and what's happening with development down there. And I know there's been a lot of controversy over the development of housing down there. However, I don't know, if you want to sell art, you kind of have to have people that have checkbooks.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a dichotomy, isn't it?
So there's always going to be somebody that's not liking what's happening. Change is by its own nature difficult, right? And I think some of the artists that feel like they got the raw end of the deal, or they don't like the changes that they're seeing, maybe have forgotten that they may have displaced somebody themselves at some point. So, I mean, it's for me. I think we have to just kind of step a few stories above and look at it from hopefully like a 10,000 foot level, and say, what is the place? What is the city that we live in? How does this work for the future? We live in a desert city, first of all, so desert cities should be super compact. We've been doing this all wrong for a long time. We shouldn't be having like this.
With the water.
Water shouldn't be going 100 miles in each direction. If you want to be a sustainable desert city, at least, if you want to poof out in a few decades, just keep doing what we're doing. So we've got to take a really a hard look at what that means, and to really live. For me, one of the major reasons that I was really interested in development as an artist was I have always believed that it's artists that really make workable, compact, urban cities interesting. You know, you can build all you want, but if you don't have something going on the street level, and you don't have the people that are that creating this culture.
Well, people from New York and San Francisco and London and England, they're not going to come to Phoenix if there's no culture.
Right.
And so theater and music and art and, you know,
and
I think it's interesting.
I mean, you know, no matter what, you've got to have those artists living, and you've got to have workforce housing. You can't have your waiters and waitresses Ubering in or you know, coming in from 15 miles away. They need to be able to walk from work, and so yes, we need some really nice new construction. We need some high-end lofts, people that can afford to buy art, but we also need housing that is affordable for the regular people. And you know what? People that want to live in urban cities, they love mixed income. They love the.
Well, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I when I first moved here, I moved to North Scottsdale, and you know, I love living in North Scottsdale. But I live in the DC Ranch area, and I came from New York City, so it's like, where are all the interesting people? Not that the people who live in North Scottsdale aren't interesting. Don't get me wrong, but I was used to being on the subway with all kinds of cultures and all colors of skin and all artists and wealthy people and like middle of the road people, and so. You know, you can have a conversation with a homeless person or an attorney or a doctor or a movie star. I mean, like, I love the richness of the whole thing. And there was art everywhere and music. And so when I first came here, although I really appreciated the lifestyle of North Scottsdale, I felt kind of hungry for the rest of it. I'm so grateful that I had a chance to live in Cave Creek and then live in Central Phoenix, where I could see that we have so much of that here, for sure.
Well, and think about where we're at in the country today, too. If we had more diverse living conditions, we reinforce ourselves. We live in these idyllic neighborhoods, in places where we're not challenged on what we think every day. So when you live in a city, you've got so many different backgrounds and, like you said, cultures as well. You're constantly having to think through your own political ideologies and your stances, and your life experience changes by being exposed to something that's different. You know, if we want to just stay where we're at and get even more polarized, which I don't know if it's even possible at this point as a country, just stay in your comfort zone and have your buddies tell you that, you know, everything you say is perfectly fine and everything's right with the world, as long as you stay on that team, you're good. That's
right. You do it. You know, we were walking around North Phoenix, you know, where we live, way North Phoenix, and I love it. I always forget this about myself until I get to a new neighborhood. I always just do the walk thing. And I was mesmerized by Central Phoenix, and I'm mesmerized by North Phoenix. It's different reasons, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's house is different. You can see the effort that people are making, you know, or not making, right? To have their home be their own, and there's creative expression in that, right?
Absolutely.
So the over topic for this episode is ignoring the naysayers and trusting your gut. So it sounds like we've talked a little bit about how to ignore the people that were like, oh, what the hell are you doing? And just kind of go with your gut instinct.
Yeah. When have I had to do that? Is that what you asked? When?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you that this guy, Wayne Dahl, just posted. He said, Wayne is a pioneer of downtown Phoenix, is a great asset to our community, with a huge thumbs up. So that's from Michelle Dahl. Oh, she just posted that. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah. So I'm a good lead in for this question, right?
Well, it's funny. So when I did affordable housing for artists at Holga's, I couldn't get a loan anywhere. I took bankers to finance the building, and they thought I was out of my mind. It was really, you know, like I said, the 14-unit apartment complex. It had 2 people that were living there illegal, and one that was so stoned that, you know, it was a really, really rough neighborhood in that point. And so I couldn't get a bank loan, and I didn't have enough to do it myself. I had to find money somewhere. I broke down and asked my mother to loan me $30,000, which is what I needed for matching funds. What I didn't have, I had another 30 that I'd saved away. And so I had to show it to her, and I decided to tour her upstairs because the bottom floor units were always getting broken into. And I picked just a random unit upstairs. Well, it was a bad pick. So I opened the door and there was a naked couple there with a crack pipe. And they were really disturbed that I had upset their day. And Mom kind of just looked at me. You gotta be kidding. And she did it, but nobody thought that I was heading in a direction where I would ever get my money back, or much less succeed. The funny thing is, and the naysayers, is that I had a waiting list for those apartments within a month of completing the rehab. Even before that, I think. And it is because I marketed them directly, specifically for artists. I took 2 of the units out of the inventory and made a gallery space, which the bankers again said, that's crazy. You can't take.
And I've been there many times. You've done a lot of awesome work.
But I said, there's no profit if we're not filled. So I think this is a fair give back, and it's also going to be a win for the neighborhood. And I think Holga is, even more than Monorchid, affected downtown and the renaissance of having, this cultural touchstone for people to go to. The First Fridays thing really wasn't happening on Roosevelt until that place opened up. That and Monorchid both opened up that year. For me, it's funny. I look back and I think about what I had as a child. What the nearest thing to First Fridays or the art walk or the gallery walk. And there was nothing like that. We drove around in a circle around a mall called Metro Center, hoping that the stoplight would catch us next to somebody that we wanted to talk to. And we hoped that they'd roll their window down and, maybe we might meet somebody new that night. That's pathetic. I mean, that's just sad. But that was our reality. That or Central Avenue, which was even, that had already kind of started to die when I was in high school. But that was our cultural touchstone. That was where we went to on a Saturday night to meet people. There's nothing more important than creating the opportunity for us to mentor and teach the next generation. And by building arts districts, we do exactly that.
I think that what you've done is very brave. To go and to create affordable housing in a scary neighborhood, to borrow from your family, which I've done myself. I've had 6 businesses of my own, and I've bootstrapped all of them, and I've borrowed from family. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of scary moments. You lose sometimes,
Yeah.
And and you got to work 120-hour weeks sometimes. You have no choice. There's nobody to pass the buck to. The fact that you are able to think about artists in that way while you're taking such a huge personal risk is really something to be commended. And what's happening on Roosevelt Row. I mean, I love it when I go down to First Friday and I see just like, there's 2 parts to Art Walk. The one is the art, but the more important part, I think, is the community part.
Yeah.
And you really shed some light on that, if you're a kid going down to First Friday Art Walk and buying a fully made burger from a vendor and having the ability to walk around downtown. I mean, Roosevelt Row and throughout that whole neighborhood is literally packed rim to rim, cops like directing traffic. And that's an amazing thing that you've done for the city of Phoenix and for artists, but more importantly, the community. Thank you.
And I did it for myself too. I mean, for me to think about there's a slim chance that you might find some art that's really changes your life as well. I think about the 18-year-old or the 16-year-old me and, how that might have influenced me if I had had that opportunity then. So, there's nothing more important than investing in your future. And now that I have a new son, I mean, I'm even more determined that we work on Phoenix and kind of fix some of the things that have been broken for a long time.
Well, it's super cool. And I look forward to working with you on some capacity for the good of the community. I have a feeling that you and I will be doing more things together after this conversation.
I love it.
I thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
And for again, all you're doing for Phoenix. And most importantly, for being a good dad. I think the most important job you're ever going to have, the most important creative act that you're ever going to have is raising a human being with the skills and the ability to be a functioning human being on this planet.
No question.
It's the most important thing you'll ever do.
No question. I wrote.
Thank you for taking the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Wayne. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Take care. All right, everybody. That's the end of Relentless Talk Radio. So next week, Tuesday, 2:30, always on Relentless Talk Radio's business page. You can go to YouTube. Now I'm behind on my YouTubes, but I'm hoping to catch up today and tomorrow. So you can go to YouTube, the Micalizzi Enterprises YouTube channel, and see any past episodes. You can always see replays on Relentless Talk Radio on Facebook. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for your time. That's a wrap for episode 41. Take care.